It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for agreeing to interview with SPMG Media.
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to start at the beginning. Your career has spanned 50 years.
It has?
Yes, sir, it
Oh,
has.
good Lord.
We're going to start at the beginning with you. You attended St. Louis University and studied business administration. Why business administration?
Well, I didn't know any better.
Yeah. And from there, you went on to Washington University, and tell us a little bit about that. You majored in voice?
Yeah, I went to Washington University and I majored in voice. And let's see, I think I took a course in accounting and various things like that.
You also, you were raised by your grandmother. Now, I know we talked about you grew up in St. Louis, which we both, I was born there, so that's our commonality.
I didn't know you were born
I
there.
was born there.
You told me that. You must have.
Yes, I did.
Yeah?
Yes, I did. You were raised by your grandmother. Tell me a little bit about your grandmother.
My grandmother was one of those women who, I always called her a pioneer type. A person who had a very good sense of herself. And she was a disciplinarian without taking away your your dignity, your esteem. And which I thought was an amazing accomplishment because she could beat the stew out of you and didn't bother her one bit because she knew she was right.
Fantastic. What are some of the lessons she instilled in you?
Well, don't curse, don't fight. Be a good boy. She was wonderful. She was a wonderful woman.
Now, you joined the U.S. Army, and what motivated you to do that?
I don't know, I was sort of restless. I'd gotten thrown out of St. Joseph High for talking and running off at the mouth. And I'd gotten thrown out of school, and things looked pretty bleak. It looked as if I was going to mess this up before it could even get started. So that's why I went. That's how and why I went to the Army. I thought it might be a solution for something or other. And I got thrown out of the Army 2 years later. The guy called me and the captain called me, and I don't know, he had an instant dislike of me. And he called me in and said, "Boy, this Army ain't big enough for both of us, so one of us is going to have to go." And I was sort of goal-breaking. I got a job. I was the guy, what was I? I was a mailman, which is a kind of goal-breaking job. I mean, I did that for a while. And then, but he just did not care for me. For what reason, I don't know. I've speculated that it had something to do with my arrogance, which everyone told me I was. I was arrogant. And he said, "Now, one of us is going to have to leave. Now, who you suppose that's going to be, boy?" I said, "Me, sir?" He said, "You got that right." And so after 2 years, I had volunteered for 3 years. So after, no, it wasn't 2 years, but he said, "I'm going to give you your GI Bill and all of that." I'm not going to penalize you in that way. And I thanked him for that. So he threw me out.
All right. Okay. You originally started as a stage actor. Tell us how Leslie, what is that?
Chabai.
Shabai. Your teacher, how did he influence you?
Well, he could sing. He had done buffo parts, what they call buffo parts, clown or funny man in an opera. He had done a lot of that work after coming from Hungary and being at 2 schools. He had been at Bennington, Vermont. What's the school up there? Bennington, Vermont. It's a woman's school. At any rate, he'd been there, and he came down to Washington University in St. Louis as artist in residence. And he gave wonderful concerts. And he was a very gentle man, and he took a liking to me. I called myself pursuing a career either in opera or concerts. And so he facilitated a little of that. And when I got ready to leave St. Louis, because I was very impatient in those days, things weren't happening fast enough. And I asked him, should I make this move? And he said, well, normally I might say to my students, I don't know. He said, but you have something that I think might stand you in good stead in New York. And he gave me a couple of letters of reference and stuff like that.
Well, you moved on from there to New York, and from what I understand, became one of the best reviewed young actors at that time. Tell us about the transition to New York and how that came about, and how you were able to land roles.
Well, there's some other history in there that prompted me to get into show business. When my grandmother died, it turned out that we could not bury her because no one had any money. We had no aunts, uncles, cousins, none of that. It was a small family. And I sort of made a binding vow on myself that I would never be caught like that again, to not be able to bury my grandmother, who had been the world to me. Without her, God knows where I would have wound up. And so I saw show business as a possible means of escape. And of course, I didn't find it out until after I got married that I was too big for St. Louis. So that's when I took off, and I had plans. After I got married, I had plans that I would move my family as soon as I could to the East Coast, New York in particular. And it took a while before I could achieve that.
Well, you did a lot.